Is Bitcoin? What does Bitcoin do? Is it perfect? Neither was email when it was invented in 1972.
It doesn't care where you're born, what color your skin is, or where you are in the world. It's an open network. It's maintained equally by people all over the world. Anyone can verify the transactions, and it happens instantly. For just a few cents, you can send any amount of money to anywhere in the world. Bitcoin is a global community of inclusion, an invitation to participate in an open world. Join us today and help us shape the future.
Is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the first decentralized digital currency. Bitcoins are digital coins you can send through the internet. Compared to other alternatives, Bitcoins have a number of advantages. Bitcoins are transferred directly from person to person via the net, without going through a bank or clearinghouse. This means that the fees are much lower. You can use them in every country. Your account cannot be frozen, and there are no prerequisites or arbitrary limits. Let's look at how it works. Several currency exchanges exist where you can buy and sell Bitcoins for dollars, euros, and more. Your Bitcoins are kept in your digital wallet on your computer or mobile device. Sending Bitcoins is as simple as sending an email, and you can purchase anything with Bitcoin. The Bitcoin network is secured by individuals called miners. Miners are rewarded newly generated Bitcoins for verifying transactions. After transactions are verified, they are recorded in a transparent public ledger. Bitcoin opens up a whole new platform for innovation. The software is completely open source and anyone can review the code. Bitcoin is changing finance the same way the web changed publishing. When everyone has access to a global market, great ideas flourish. Bitcoins are a great way for businesses to minimize transaction fees. It doesn't cost anything to start accepting them, and it's easy to set up. There are no chargebacks, and you'll get additional business from the Bitcoin economy.
Chairman Crapo, Ranking Member Brown, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Peter Van Valkenburg, and I'm the Director of Research at Coin Center, an independent nonprofit focused on the public policy issues affecting cryptocurrency and public blockchain networks. What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the world's first cryptocurrency, and it works because of the world's first public blockchain network. What does Bitcoin do? It's simple. It lets you send and receive value to and from anyone in the world using nothing more than a computer and an internet connection. Now, why is it revolutionary? Because unlike every other tool for sending money over the internet, it works without the need to trust a middleman. The lack of any corporation in between means that Bitcoin is the world's first public digital payments infrastructure. And by public, I simply mean available to all and not owned by any single entity. Now, we have public infrastructure for information, for websites, for email. It's called the internet. But the only public payments infrastructure that we have is cash, as in paper money. And it only works in face-to-face transactions. Before Bitcoin, if you wanted to pay someone remotely over the phone or the internet, then you could not use public infrastructure. You would rely on a private bank to open their books and add a ledger entry that debits you and credits the person you're paying. And if you both don't use the same bank, well, then there'll be multiple banks and multiple ledger entries in between. With Bitcoin, the ledger is the public blockchain, and anyone can add an entry to that ledger, transferring their Bitcoins to someone else. And anyone, regardless of their nationality, race, religion, gender, sex, or creditworthiness, can for absolutely no cost create a Bitcoin address in order to receive payments digitally. Bitcoin is the world's first globally accessible public money. Is it perfect? No. Neither was email when it was invented in 1972. Bitcoin's not the best money on every margin. It's not yet accepted everywhere. It's not used often to quote prices, and it's not always a stable store of value. But it is working, and the mere fact that it works without trusted intermediaries is amazing. It's a computer science breakthrough. And it will be as significant for freedom, prosperity, and human flourishing as the birth of the internet. And Bitcoin is just the beginning. If we can replace private payments infrastructure, then we can replace other private choke points to human interaction as well. Now, why should we want to build more public infrastructure? Why should we embrace blockchains over corporate intermediaries? Why should we tolerate their inefficiencies and work to make them better? Why should we want the pioneers of this technology here in the United States and not fleeing overseas? A simple reason. Because the corporate intermediaries providing today's critical but privately owned infrastructure are becoming fewer, larger, and more powerful, and their failures are increasingly grave. So roughly half of all Americans, 143 million people, had their Social Security numbers exposed to hackers because of a breach at Equifax. The SWIFT network has relayed hundreds of millions of dollars in fraudulent transactions because of hacked member banks in Bangladesh, Vietnam, Ecuador, and Russia. The FBI suspects now that the largest of these hacks was perpetrated by North Korea. Corrupt, low-level employees at an Indian bank, Punjab National, were able to fraudulently certify SWIFT messages, stealing $1.8 billion. It's the largest electronic bank robbery in history. In fact, it's the largest bank robbery in history. In October 2016, an estimated 1.2 million internet-connected devices were hacked and turned into a botnet that for several hours made prominent websites unavailable across Europe and North America, including CNN and Fox News, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. Increasingly, physical machines are being connected to the internet to augment their capabilities. They're wired through servers that are owned and maintained by private and trusted intermediaries, the so-called Internet of Things. Pacemakers from St. Jude's Hospital have been hacked. Baby monitors from TrendNet have been hacked. And Jeeps from Jeep have been hacked to the point where they can be remotely commandeered and driven off the road. Now, those vulnerabilities are inescapable in systems that have single points of failure. It doesn't matter if the point of failure is a corporation or if it's a government. There shouldn't be a single point of failure. Similar choke points existed before the internet. If you wanted to deliver a message, you'd have to go through one of 3 television broadcasters or a handful of newspapers. Private corporations are essential, but no critical infrastructure should rely on 1 or 2. The internet removed single points of failure in communications infrastructure and ushered in a wave of competition among new media corporations building on top of its public rails. Blockchains can similarly disintermediate critical payments and IoT infrastructure. The technology is not yet ready to answer all of those questions today, but it is our best hope. And as with the internet in the 1990s, we need a light-touch, pro-innovation policy to ensure that these innovations flourish in America for the benefit and security of all Americans.
No central authority oversees Bitcoin transactions. Rather, the miners work together to validate them. Bitcoin users will generally have wallet addresses, and that's like a string of letters and numbers that can be identified on the blockchain and serve as a sending or receiving location for digital currency. This address serves as a unique identifier on the blockchain. Anytime Bitcoin is sent or received to or from this address, it's logged in the chain, and it can be traced back and forth and back and forth. But what makes Bitcoin worth anything at all? Well, nothing, other than what people are willing to pay for it. Well, that and that there can never be more than 21 million Bitcoin in existence. This creates a finite supply. The only way new Bitcoin is made is through mining, or as rewards to miners for validating transactions. The amount of Bitcoin a miner gets for processing a block slowly decreases over time in a process known as halving. The reward for mining is cut in half every 210,000 blocks mined. This process is set to continue until 2140, when all of the Bitcoins, all 21 million of them, are mined. After this, miners will get paid fees based on a structure to continue processing transactions on the blockchains. This also means that mining can get less profitable over time as the rewards decrease. However, that's only if the price stays the same. If the price per Bitcoin goes up, if it goes up faster than the rewards decrease, mining can actually get more profitable, which sometimes happens. The limited supply of Bitcoin also means that there's a supply and demand issue, as we mentioned. If more people wanted to buy Bitcoins, due to there being a limited supply, the price would need to go up. That's why we've seen such meteoric rise in Bitcoin's price. If the lowest owner of Bitcoin doesn't want to sell for anything less than $50,000, then Bitcoin would be valued at $50,000 because that's the lowest you could buy it for. That's a little bit oversimplified for supply and demand, but essentially Bitcoin is worth what people are willing to pay for it. It doesn't have any intrinsic value. All of this serves as a very basic overview to Bitcoins and blockchains, though. We haven't really gone into hashed data, different risks to the Bitcoin network, like something called a 51% attack, or even the cryptography and security that goes into making the blockchain and blockchain wallets completely secure. However, to the casual or beginning Bitcoin owner or buyer, that info can sometimes overwhelm and confuse and warrants its own individual research. In summary, Bitcoin is a digital token validated by a secure, decentralized software network that runs off of computers all around the world known as miners. These miners ensure people can buy and sell Bitcoin securely, and for their trouble, the miners get rewarded with a small amount of new Bitcoin. There can only ever be 21 million Bitcoin in existence, and due to that limited supply, as more people want to buy Bitcoin, the price goes up and up until more people are willing to sell it at a given price. Supply and demand. No one really knows what's going to happen to Bitcoin or its price, but one thing is for sure. Fortunes have been made and lost on the cryptocurrency, but it's likely here to stay. But of course, when you make a fortune, the IRS wants a piece of it. If you've bought Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency, you're going to need to file income tax on your earnings or risk being audited by the IRS in the US.
Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin operates as a peer-to-peer network. This means that everyone who uses Bitcoin is a tiny fraction of the bank of Bitcoin. But where do Bitcoins come from? With paper money, a government decides when to print and distribute money. Bitcoin doesn't have a central government. With Bitcoin, miners use special software to solve math problems and are issued a certain number of Bitcoins in exchange. This provides a smart way to issue the currency and also creates an incentive for more people to mine. And since miners are required to approve Bitcoin transactions, more miners means a more secure network. The Bitcoin network automatically changes the difficulty of the math problems, depending on how fast they're being solved. In the early days, Bitcoin miners solved these math problems with the processors in their computers. Soon, miners discovered that graphics cards used for gaming were much better suited to this kind of math. Graphics cards are faster, but they use more electricity and generate a lot of heat. The first commercial Bitcoin mining products included chips that were reprogrammed for mining Bitcoin. These chips were faster, but still power-hungry. ASIC, or Application-Specific Integrated Circuit chips, are designed specifically for Bitcoin mining. ASIC technology has made Bitcoin mining even faster while using less power. As the popularity of Bitcoin increases, more miners join the network, making it more difficult for individuals to solve the math problems. To overcome this, miners have developed a way to work together in pools. Pools of miners find solutions faster than their individual members, and each miner is rewarded proportionate to the amount of work he or she provides. Mining is an important and integral part of Bitcoin that ensures fairness while keeping the Bitcoin network stable, safe, and secure.
Byzantine generals problem was first introduced in a computer science paper published in 1982. The problem discussed in the paper is that reliable computer systems must be able to function effectively in the presence of faulty components that may send conflicting information to different parts of the system. This issue is even more acute when we talk about decentralized computer networks. Imagine the following thought experiment. The Byzantine army has surrounded an enemy city. The army is organized into several units. Each unit is commanded by a general, and they all need to come up with a coordinated plan of action. However, they are located away from each other, and the only means to communicate among themselves is via messages. To make things more complicated, one or more of the generals are possibly traitors. The presence of disloyal generals means that misleading messages could be sent aiming to disrupt any coordinated plan of action, be it attack or retreat. To find a successful solution to this conundrum, the Byzantine army needs to find its path to coordinated action one way or another. To achieve this, the Byzantine army needs an algorithm that works effectively towards a coordinated outcome where the loyal generals follow it and the traitors don't. Now that you are familiar with the problem, let's see its solution. It's called the Byzantine fault tolerance algorithm. Over the years, there have been several proposed theoretical solutions involving game theory and math. The first practical implementation of Byzantine fault tolerance algorithm came with the Bitcoin's proof of work. In this case, the generals are nodes on the Bitcoin network, also known as miners. A network node is a connection point that can receive, create, store, and send data across a network. In other words, nodes are the connected dots that make up a network. To simplify, think of it in the following way. In the image we traditionally use to depict a blockchain, every single computer is a separate node. They are all connected and can receive, create, store, and send data to each other. In the context of the Byzantine fault tolerance algorithm, the important concept to grasp is that these mining nodes start from the assumption that nobody else on the network can be trusted. Proof of work secures network consensus, even in the presence of non-compliant nodes. That is, even if there are some Byzantine generals who are not acting in the army's best interest, coordinated action can still be achieved. Let's see how this mechanism works in Bitcoin. As we all know, Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer network where all activities are done by its users through appropriate software and hardware. These activities include making transactions, receiving transactions, and verifying and transmitting transactions. Now, this is where we need to introduce the concept of mining, which many of you have probably heard. Mining is an activity carried out by network participants which involves proof of work and results in generating new coins as a reward for the miner who successfully did this proof of work first for each new block. Proof of work requires a hefty number of calculations done by a computer aimed at solving cryptographic hash puzzles. These are the same puzzles described earlier, enabling the network to function and to continue exchanging transaction messages with other network participants. Let's dig into the nuts and bolts of this mechanism to figure out how it works. First, let's see how miners create new blocks. Mining nodes collect and aggregate new transaction data. Upon receiving such data, each node independently verifies each and every transaction against a long list of criteria, including tracking the source of the digital money being spent, checking for double spending of the same money, checking if the total transaction volume is within the allowed range of 0 to 21 million bitcoins, as 21 is the maximum total supply of Bitcoin allowed by the system. And the list goes on. The Bitcoin software installed on the node performs a number of other checks and balances. Verified transactions are aggregated into transaction pools, also called memory pools or mempools, where they wait until they are included into a block. As miners compete with each other to be the first one to come up with a new valid block, they need to make sure the transactions in their mempools have not already been included in previous blocks. After collecting and arranging verified transactions in a candidate block, the miner needs to construct the block header, which includes a few important components: a summary of all the transaction data in the candidate block, a link to the previous block in the chain, also known as a parent block, a timestamp showing the time of creation of the block, and a valid proof of work. The summaries of what's included in a given block are done through hash functions, which process data in such a way that results in a standardized unique identification code. This identification code is also referred to as a digital fingerprint. In this way, the system has a unique identifier for each block of transactions. Here are some examples of block headers as viewed in blockexplorer.com and blockchain.info. As you can see on top, just below the block number, there is a long alphanumeric string called block hash, or just hash. Alphanumeric means that it consists of both letters and numbers. This is a type of encoding data and is the output result of processing the block header data below through Bitcoin's cryptographic hash function. You may have heard the name of this function, SHA-256, which stands for Secure Hash Algorithm. You probably remember that we mentioned and briefly explained hash functions in the section about cryptography. We are discussing them again here because they play such an important role in proof of work. As we've learned, a hash function can digest any kind of data, of any size, into a fixed-length string of characters, which can serve as a unique digital fingerprint or identifier. Moreover, these cryptographic hash functions only work in one direction. Once we have the output, we cannot simply invert the function, plug in the output, and get input data on the other end. To illustrate what it means to invert a function, consider the four basic mathematical operations. Addition and subtraction are inverse functions of each other. Multiplication and division are inverse functions of each other. We can always construct equations with these functions to find any unknown variable. For example, 3 times x equals 15. X equals 15 divided by 3 equals 5. Many mathematical functions can be inverted in a similar way. However, this is not the case with cryptographic hash functions. The only feasible way an unknown random variable can be found in a cryptographic function's input data set is by trying different values for the unknown one by one, given all.
The investment bank filed for bankruptcy this morning, a shocking ending to a weekend of frantic negotiations which failed to save the company from collapse.
Lehman Brothers is going bankrupt.
Down 1.7% here, loss of 37 points or so.
We're down by between 3. We're watching this market. We're red everywhere, essentially. Down by 4, 5,
51%.
Everything, and it was the worst day on Wall Street since the crash of 1987.
Ever since the beginning of time, entrepreneurs, innovators, revolutionaries, they embrace the limelight. They want to be known. But then, how can the creator of one of the best technology ever known to mankind remain anonymous over a decade on? Who is Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, the revolutionary digital currency that's taken the world by storm? It's a question that's puzzled and fascinated the world for over a decade. Today we're going to explore 5 shocking theories for the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto. But before we dive into these, let me ask you, have you ever thought about the fact that Satoshi Nakamoto could be anyone or anything? A group of people, a government agency, a tech giant, an anonymous hacker, or even an alien civilization? The possibilities are endless, and that's what makes this mystery so intriguing. So let's dive in. The first theory we'll explore, which is one of the most common explanations, is that Satoshi Nakamoto is actually a group of cryptographers, not a lone wolf. When Bitcoin was first introduced in the infamous 2008 white paper, it was clear that the creator or creators had a clear, exceptional understanding of cryptography. It's unlikely that one individual could have written such a comprehensive document on their own. In fact, some experts have suggested that the technical aspects of Bitcoin suggest it must have been the result of a collective effort. this group of cryptographers could have come together for a common purpose. Perhaps they wanted to create a digital currency which couldn't be controlled by governments or traditional financial institutions. Or maybe they simply wanted to test the viability of this newly found blockchain technology. But the burning question is, why would they want to remain anonymous? Well, we need to understand. Creating a decentralized digital currency would have been seen as a threat by the existing financial system.
The Biden administration, the Democratic Party, really doesn't like crypto.
The EU and governments hate cryptocurrencies.
And when the real founder of Bitcoin comes out, Bitcoin will go to fucking zero.
And it's possible that governments or other entities could have tried to shut down their work. By remaining anonymous, this group could have avoided being shut down or targeted, and could have continued their work on Bitcoin without fear of retribution. Perhaps the creators understood that Bitcoin as a technology was most vulnerable in its infancy, and remaining anonymous could actually buy them some time. So while we may never know for sure, it's entirely possible that Satoshi Nakamoto is not just one individual, but indeed a group of highly skilled, coordinated cryptographers working together to change the world. What if the creator of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto, was not an individual or a group of individuals? What if instead it was a government agency? That's right. The theory suggests that a government agency such as the CIA or NSA could have created Bitcoin to destabilize the existing financial system. Perhaps it's not as crazy as it sounds. Bitcoin's rise to popularity has caused a lot of concern among governments and central banks around the world. In fact, some governments and countries have completely banned the use of cryptocurrencies entirely. So it's not unreasonable to think that a government agency could have created Bitcoin to undermine the traditional financial system and assert their dominance in the global economy. Also, the fact that Bitcoin's creator Satoshi Nakamoto then decides to remain anonymous only adds to the suspicion. It's not uncommon for governments to use pseudonyms or aliases when working on classified projects, so it's entirely possible that Satoshi Nakamoto is a cover identity used by a government agency. Keep in mind that Bitcoin was created in 2008 in the midst of the global financial crisis.
Completely wiped out. Weekend of frantic negotiations which failed to save the company from collapse.
Perhaps this is the time when global elites came to a realization that their existing financial systems were not fit for purpose and at risk. Thus, they frantically began working on a successor before somebody else did. Of course, this theory is just speculation, but the possible benefit to a government that created Bitcoin are certainly undeniable. By creating a decentralized currency that operates outside the traditional financial system, they would have a tool to reduce their reliance on the US dollar, which could have significant geopolitical implications. So what do you think? Could Bitcoin and Satoshi Nakamoto be the work of a government agency? It's certainly a fascinating possibility. Tech giants, the likes of Google, Apple, Microsoft, they have the resource, expertise, and motivation to create Bitcoin. What if they are Satoshi Nakamoto? These companies have a significant interest in the financial industry and would benefit greatly from creating a decentralized currency system just like Bitcoin. As more people adopt Bitcoin, traditional financial institutions, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, could become obsolete. And tech giants would have a new opportunity to become the gatekeepers of the new financial industry. The fact that the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto remains a mystery could be explained by the fact that it's a collaboration between two huge tech giants who just want to remain anonymous. This theory is supported by the fact that Bitcoin code is incredibly complex, and it's unlikely that a single person could have created it alone. The creation of Bitcoin can also be seen as a way for tech giants to increase their power and influence over the world. By creating a currency that is not tied to any one government or central bank, they will be able to control a huge, significant part of global financial wealth. This will give them unprecedented power to shape global politics and economics. Finally, the theory that tech giants are behind Bitcoin is further supported by the fact that these companies have a history of creating and promoting new technologies that disrupt traditional industries. For example, Google disrupted the advertising industry, Apple disrupted the music industry, and Microsoft disrupted the personal computer industry. It's not a stretch to imagine that these companies would also want to disrupt the financial industry, one of the biggest industries, and move it away from existing players, such as banks. What if the most common theory was true? What if Satoshi Nakamoto was just this one person on a mission, a lone wolf? One possible motivation for an anonymous hacker to create Bitcoin could be a desire for social and political change. The existing financial system is centralized and controlled by governments and financial institutions, which can have a negative consequence for ordinary people. For example, central banks can manipulate the value of any given fiat currency through their monetary policy. This could lead to inflation or deflation. Banks can charge high fees of financial transactions, deny services to certain individuals or community. This creates censorship. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is decentralized and operates on a peer-to-peer network, meaning that there is no central authority controlling the system. This gives individuals more control over their financial transactions and protects them from potential abuse by financial institutions or governments. An anonymous hacker who values privacy and freedom could have dreamt Bitcoin as a tool to promote these values. Furthermore, the fact that Satoshi Nakamoto has remained anonymous for so long suggests that this was intentional. An anonymous hacker who created Bitcoin would likely want to remain anonymous in order to avoid any negative consequences from governments or other entities who may view Bitcoin as a threat to the existing financial system. The theory of an anonymous hacker being Satoshi Nakamoto seems to align well with all the values of the community. The anonymity of the creator fits with the decentralized nature of the technology, and this is the most widely held belief. Oh man, here we go. The idea that an alien civilization could have created Bitcoin is definitely the most far-fetched possibility we're covering today, but it still is one which we need to consider. We have to consider the fact that technology beyond our current understanding could exist, and that it's not out of the realm of possibility that an advanced civilization could have developed Bitcoin as a way of testing the viability of a decentralized currency system on Earth. Bitcoin is a complex technology that requires a deep understanding of cryptography, economics, and computer science. The fact that Bitcoin operates on a global scale and is accessible to anybody with an internet connection is just further testament to the sophistication of this innovation. And so the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto remaining a mystery could be simply because it's an entity which is beyond the human comprehension. If an alien civilization did create Bitcoin, it's likely that they would want to remain anonymous, and the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto could simply be a way of hiding their true identity. Of course, we have to acknowledge that this theory is super unlikely, and there is, of course, no evidence to support it. But then again, why would aliens leave any evidence? The possibilities are endless, and the fact that we are still debating who is Satoshi Nakamoto is just further testament to the widespread nature of this technology and the impact it has had on this world. So there you have it, 5 different theories for the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto. The reality is we could have come up with another 5 and another 5 after that. While we may never know the true identity of Satoshi Nakamoto, analyzing the different possibilities and theories really helps us understand the true nature of this incredible technology.
Man is the focus of international attention this morning. Newsweek reports that he is the mastermind behind Bitcoin. The digital money is now accepted by merchants all around the world, but the creator has been a mystery. In a moment, we'll talk to the Newsweek author who says she tracked him down. But first, Vanita Nair shows us how the man is disputing her report.
Okay, no questions right now. I want my free lunch.
64-year-old Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto emerged from his Southern California home Thursday and walked right into a media frenzy. Hours after Newsweek magazine claimed he was the mystery man behind Bitcoin.
I'm not in Bitcoin.
But your address
Not in Bitcoin. I don't know anything about it.
According to that article, Nakamoto is a model train buff who lives in a modest single-family home with his mother. When confronted about Bitcoin, he said, "I am no longer involved in that, and I cannot discuss it." The article triggered a full-blown game of cat and mouse through the streets of Los Angeles, with the media tracking Nakamoto's every move, using the Twitter hashtag #BitcoinChase. Eventually, the retired engineer ended up at the Associated Press Bureau.
Where did that come about?
Over a meal of free sushi, he continued denying he was the computer whiz worth an estimated $400 million. In fact, he said he hadn't even heard of Bitcoin until 3 weeks ago.
The main reason I'm here is to clear my name that I have nothing to do with Bitcoin, nothing to do with developing. I was just an engineer doing something else.
This isn't the first time the media has tried to unmask Bitcoin's founder. Other outlets have tried, but failed to identify the creator. Nathaniel Popper covers Bitcoin for the New York Times.
This is a global system worth billions of dollars, and I think the world does have a right to know. I mean, people have sunk their lives into this.
But at least for now,
I never worked for the company. I don't know any people there.
It looks like the mystery lives on. For CBS This Morning, Vanita Nair, New York.
Big one. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, this will be good. Oh, jeez.
We have some water too.
Hey, who's yours? I'm saying I'm no longer in engineering. That's it. And even if I was, when we get hired, you have to sign this document, contract saying you will not reveal anything we develop during and after the employment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I implied.
Okay.
That's what it's not like, it sounded like, I was involved before with Bitcoin and look like I'm not involved. No, that's not what I meant. I want to clarify that.
Okay, you have 6 children, is that right? I mean,
Yes.
basically last night.
No, well, that's not even unique.
Okay.
You're just middling around with the addresses.
Okay.
Destination or source. Oh, jeez. No, I'm not that brilliant. Right there, it got nothing to do with skipping a financial institution.
Your brother Arthur, who doesn't get along with you, says you didn't get along with your stepfather, but...
It's just quote stocks and display quote symbols on real time.
So she believes in part, it seems like, that you could have made Bitcoin.
Like I said, even if I did, I'm not free to discuss anything about what I did with Quotron and Citicorp.
Sure.
Okay. Oh man,
Is this part correct? That you graduated from? But why did you change your name at that time?
Oh, because I feel it's much more suitable with non-Japanese name, basically. Cruise missile system, Aegis. Yeah, well, it also means man of simplicity, which is kind of funny now that where I am now. Various defense contract, but including naval. Satoshi is not that common. And then when you put telecom engineer in there, that makes it pretty zero-end kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I still saying that I'm not involved with that back then.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that programming somehow, communication system? Or?
And I really like to find somebody who came up with this name.
Yeah, yeah.
It's most likely it's a fictitious name.
His house from his front door and took off trying to get to this Japanese. Heavily quotes this guy, Chief Scientist Gavin Anderson.
I don't know him.
Okay, have you ever corresponded by email?
No.
Okay.
I don't even know his name or person.
There's a discussion here of your political views because it.
Oh, jeez, that too?
Well,
oh, man.
Let me until we get to a part.
The idea.
The creation of the idea.
Hi everyone, it's been a while since I did a video, and I just want to do a quick video discussing where Bitcoin is and what it's going to do in the next few months, at least what I see it's going to do. I mean, I could be completely wrong, and I've been wrong before, but, you know, it's fun to guess at these things, and so I'm going to lay out some guesses on where it's going and so forth. One of the things I want you to understand is that Bitcoin is more than just a payment system. Satoshi Nakamoto, he wrote it as to ensure that, you know what, you could do escrow transactions, bonded contracts, third-party arbitration, and multi-party signatures, and much more. This system, this whole Bitcoin protocol, is such a big game changer that, you know, the Bart Chilton coming out and saying that he wants to regulate it, he has no clue how that he's going to get a knife in the belly and a twist, that criminal, right, who says that, you know, silver's not manipulated. He's going to see that Bitcoin is going to regulate its own self, because you can create a system that allows for what's it called, leverage options and what's it called, derivatives, basically, which they want to regulate without a centralized system. And these are the amazing things that the Bitcoin protocol provides that you're not aware of. So right now, all most people are talking about is like, hey, you can buy drugs with it. You can what's it called? You can buy a few things with it. You could transfer. You could just speculate it and so forth. But no. This system is bigger than you really can perceive right now. It's basically like perceiving the internet to where it is today back in 1992. You can't perceive what the internet would provide, right, back in 1992. I had no clue that YouTube would be existing in 1992. So clearly, this is how big, and I'm trying to explain that this is how big Bitcoins is going to be. It also, right, if it catches on in a big way, right, all those features, right, have already been laid down. In the very beginning, Satoshi thought of all these things, right, for finances. And I don't know how, but he's laid it all down inside the Bitcoin protocol so that it's possible once it gets big enough. Wow, this system has to remain free and open. I'm going to move my life in that direction, ensuring that Bitcoins does not get co-opted by the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and so forth, because it is a freedom provider for the rest of humanity, because you can't create more. It's mathematically impossible. And you know, a lot of you are skeptical, a lot of you don't believe in the Bitcoin system, and that's fine. You can stay on the sidelines, but if you really want to become wealthy in the future, I would suggest you take $1 frickin' $1, buy some Bitcoins, put it in a goddamn wallet, put it fucking away. Okay, I'm sorry for swearing, but you know what? It's just $1. Get some Bitcoins, put it away. Goes to nothing. Who cares, right? You only spent $1, right? You'll get a million Satoshis for $1, right? And the way I see it, that will be worth $1 million adjusted for inflation once Bitcoin gets to where it's going to be. So it's up to you. You know what? I know you're not going to listen to that advice, most of you, and it's kind of sad because you know what? I was proud of the fact that once at least 5 people have become either millionaires or well off that have emailed me thanking me for recommending Bitcoins. Now, I'm hoping that every single one of you buys $1 worth of Bitcoins, just $1 freaking dollar, because you're going to be thanking me for that $1, just $1 of Bitcoins that you purchased. But the odds are most of you, 90% of you, are not going to buy even $1 worth of Bitcoins. For what reason? I have no idea. Anyways, if you take my advice, that's great. If not, that's the way it is. As for the guessing on where Bitcoin's going to go in the next 6 months, I think Bitcoin's is in a spiral downtrend. I believe that it's going to go down for quite a bit, bottom out around $26, $20 to $26, and then start moving back up for over the next 3 years.
Well, you're very pro Bitcoin. I mean, you kind of put Bitcoin in the same basket as gold and silver. And you know, when you looked at what happened, like for example, FTX, and you look at the manipulation that has happened in crypto, you know, the pump and dumps and everything else like that. Do you feel that crypto is here to stay and it is a good asset to hold on to, or are you still a little bit unsure these days?
Well, please be careful when you use the term asset, you know. The thing with Bitcoin is this, it's like anything. It's not when you sell, it's when you buy it. You know, my rich dad, your profit is made when you buy, not when you sell. I don't sell any of my properties. I sell nothing because then I have capital gains tax.
Right.
So with Bitcoin, it went up to 20,000 and I watched it drop down to, I think, 1,000, let's say. At that point, it became a technical trade. There's fundamental investing and technical trading. When I saw that thing start climbing back up, I said, I watched it at 6. And I said, I think 6 is the number. So I backed up the truck on 6,000. So today, I think Bitcoin is what, 20,000?
Yeah, Bitcoin's at 23,000 now, but it got as high as 60,000 at one point.
Yeah, but I don't buy at 60.
Right.
So anyway, I bought it at 6, and I bought a whole pile of it. Same as I buy gold all the time. I don't save dollars. I save gold, silver, Bitcoin, Ethereum. And I don't just say I like the stuff, but it seems to hold its value. And, you know, Buffett called Bitcoin rat droppings or something like that. You know, I'm going, well, he's a stock guy. Grant Cardone buys apartment houses. You don't have to buy apartment houses. You can buy a bond, and bonds are going down right now. Do you know what I mean? You just got to be smarter. I don't have bonds, by the way. But anyway, there's so many things you can buy, but the biggest question is, how smart are you with your money? And what does school teach you about money? Nothing. And you wonder why school teachers are broke? Because they don't know nothing. My whole family are school teachers. Good people, nice people, Marxist, but good people. I don't care if you're a Christian, a Jew, a Buddhist, or Israeli. I don't really care. Just show me the money, as that show says.
Yeah, I actually found the quote. I mean, Warren Buffett said cryptocurrencies basically have no value and they don't produce anything. They don't reproduce. They can't mail you a check. They can't do anything. And what you hope is that someone else comes along and pays you more money from them later on. But then that person's got the problem. In terms of value, 0.
Hey, look, I'm not saying it's not a smart dude. He's a very smart dude, you know. But yeah. You can listen to Grant Cardone also. You can listen to me. You can listen to Dave Ramsey, who says live debt free. You got to choose your teacher.
Sure.
That's all I'm saying. Like when I was in Sunday school, I was like 8 or 9 years old, and the Sunday school was a young teacher. This is in Hawaii. And she said, why were the 3 wise men wise? And I said, I raised my hand, it's about 8 or 9 years old. I said, because they were rich. And she goes, why do you say that? Because in church, love of money is the root of all evil. So she said, why do they say they're rich? I said, because they're rich. And she goes, why? So they had gold, frankincense, and myrrh. You got to be rich to have that stuff. And she shakes her head because this violates every one of her Christian values about the love of money is the root of all evil, right? She says, no, they weren't. That wasn't why they were rich. That's why they weren't wise. I said, so tell me why. So one of the most valuable lessons my little Sunday school teacher taught me. She says, because they always sought the best teacher. And for them, it was Christ. For many of my family, it's Buddha. For the Muslims, it's Abraham. For the Jews, Jews is Abraham. For the other guys, it's all this. So in real life, seek your teachers. If you listen to a school teacher about money, I'll pray for you tonight.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You want to listen to Warren Buffett? Listen to him.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually found the quote you talked about. He called...
If people think they're going to make money the next day, and worse yet, if they think somebody else that they know is going to make money and they aren't going to make money, it just draws people in.
At one point this weekend, you said that Bitcoin, and this was based, you were asked, Charlie said Bitcoin's like rat poison. You were asked about that comment, and you said, well, it's probably more like rat poison squared. Charlie went on in the meeting to then basically call Bitcoin turds.
He is an expressive sort, isn't he? Maybe when he gets a little older, he'll mature.
I just want to ask you about that because it sparked so much controversy, and particularly on Twitter and some of the places where you might expect people who are trading in cryptocurrency to be pretty loud about what they heard. What is it about Bitcoin that gets you guys so fired up?
Well, when you buy a farm, you look at the crop every year and what prices are, and you decide whether it was a satisfactory investment. I mean, you look to the asset itself and what it produces for you. When we buy a business, we look at what the business earns and decide how we feel about it in terms of what we paid. But we are buying something that at the end of the period, we not only have what we bought in the first place, but we have something that the asset produced. And when you buy non-productive assets, all you're counting on is whether the next person is going to pay you more because they're even more excited about another next person coming along. But the asset itself is creating nothing. One of the interesting things, for example, is gold. If you go back to the time of Christ and you look at how many hours of labor you had to give up in order to buy an ounce of gold, and you take it forward to now, you'll find the compound rate maybe 1/10 or 0.2 of 1%. And then you have to insure it during that time and make sure somebody doesn't steal it from you and everything. But it doesn't produce anything. And productive assets, you can pay too much for a productive asset. But I bought a farm in the 1980s, and every year look at how much it produced the way of soybeans and corn. And at the end of that period, I've still got the farm, and I've gotten some significant income off of it. Apartment house, operating business. But if you and I buy various cryptocurrencies, they're not going to multiply. They're not going to be a bunch of rabbits sitting there in front of us. They're just going to sit there. And I got to hope next time you get more excited after I bought it from you, and then maybe I'll get more excited and buy it from you. And actually, we could sit in the house by ourselves, and we could keep running up the price between the two of us. But at the end of the time, there's one Bitcoin sitting there. Now we got to find somebody else, and they come to an end. I mean, those.
So, that's a greater fool theory. That's what you're saying.
Well, yeah, it's buying something because you expect the pool of people who want to buy it because they want to sell it to somebody else will grow, and it's wonderful because it does create a rising price, does create more buyers, and people think I've got to get in on this, and it's better if they don't understand it. That's the other thing about non-productive. If you don't understand it, you get much more excited than if you understand it. I mean, if you buy a bond that says it's going to pay you 4% a year, you're not going to get any pleasant surprises. It's just going to pay you 4% a year. But if you can have anything you want to imagine. If you just look at something and say that's magic, you can do it with shark's teeth or seashells or anything, and They did it with tulips in the 17th century in Amsterdam, and they'll do it again. I mean, people, they like to speculate. They like to gamble. And if you can get something, particularly if you have something half plausible going on, if you had bought gold in 1942 and you say, we might lose the war and we might have to run off to some other country and, so let's put our assets in gold, you would have less than a penny for every dollar you got from owning stocks. Less than a penny. Now, if somebody calls that a store of value, I mean, I think they're delusionary.
Okay. Andrew has a question, too. Andrew.
Hey, Warren, related to this issue of Bitcoin, you saw that Goldman Sachs just last week announced that they were going to create effectively a trading operation around cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin in particular. You've been an investor in Goldman. What do you think of their decision to do that?
Well, they probably think that lots of people are going to get very excited about it. Well, and maybe already are, but they think there's money to be made trading them. I don't think they're expressing an opinion on the ultimate value. I would be very surprised if the top partners of Goldman are selling their Goldman stock and putting it into Bitcoin. But I want to cover this subject now because my friend Charlie will come on at 8 o'clock and he'll tell him what he will say.
Well, that's my whole entire point. I do want to ask Charlie about it because I think when he talked about the turds, he was referring to this. He said, if you're trading this, it's like watching other people trading turds and deciding you want to get a piece of that.
Well, you're not going to get me to comment on that.
Hopefully Charlie's not awake and not watching.
Well, the truth is
right
people
now.
do trade on very crazy things over time. Imagine people selling their homes to buy a tulip in Amsterdam. I could whisper something on this program, and kind of the more sillier it was, the more it might react, because there's no quantitative limits. If you buy a stock, you say, well, I'll buy it at 15 times earnings, but I won't buy it at 20 times earnings. But when you get into something that doesn't produce anything, there's no checkpoints. There's nothing to reference it to. It's gone up.
Tens of millions of dollars, a nice return for investors that are already in and those who will join much later. According to Saylor, Bitcoin's many important qualities, especially the strength of its underlying network, are enough assurance that the leading cryptocurrency will someday become a $500 trillion asset class, a 1,000% increase from the current Bitcoin market cap. During a recent interview, Saylor discusses one of the most important and common issues that people raise before investing in Bitcoin. Many people ask, is it too late to invest in Bitcoin in 2023? This is a common question many prospective investors have, and it's not unexpected considering that Bitcoin has been around for 14 years and many early investors have made millions of dollars by investing in Bitcoin and other crypto assets early. To answer this question, Saylor gives an interesting analogy comparing investing in Bitcoin now or even a few years down the line to buying property in New York City 100 years or a few decades ago. Saylor explains that New York was already the greatest city in North America by 1776, more than 100 years after it was founded by Dutch colonists around 1624. Anyone who had wanted to buy property in New York in 1776 would probably have considered themselves late to the party and thought those that got in earlier quite lucky. Yet people have continued to invest in the city and make great returns on their money for hundreds of years since then. Saylor reckons the same is going to happen with Bitcoin. Some people bought when one coin was under $100, some when it was $10,000 per coin, and millions are going to buy when a coin is selling for $100,000 or even $1 million. And investors on all levels will make their money in multiple folds. According to Saylor, Bitcoin is at the epicenter of cyberspace, where all of the world's 8 billion population will later inhabit in some form. And just like everyone was drawn to New York for its main great qualities, they will flock toward Bitcoin away from asset classes like bonds and equities. We will now bring you clips from Saylor's interview with Altcoin Daily as he paints a perfect picture of what Bitcoin's development will look like in the coming years. But before we do, please take a little time to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications for more videos like this. Also, ensure you drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
New York was the greatest city in North America by about 1776. And you would have been late to the party. But the question is, would you buy a city block in New York in 1776? Or if you waited till 1876, and you were really late to the party, and New York was the greatest city in North America. Was it too late to buy a city block in New York City in 1876? Or how about 1976? If you were 200 years late to New York City, if you look at the property values of New York in 1976, what you'll find is you would be rich if you had actually bought real estate in New York in 1976. So the answer to the issue is in every economic system, every economic empire, there's always one city, one place that one network where people gravitate to. In ancient, in the ancient Med, it was Carthage for a while, and then it was Rome, and then it was Venice, and eventually the French Empire terminated in Paris, and the British Empire terminated in London, and then eventually the American economic empire terminated in New York. And there are reasons why. It's just everybody comes together in that place. Even today, New York is still the economic epicenter of the United States. And so Bitcoin represents the economic epicenter of cyberspace. It is the one place where if I want to create a digital application, if I want to move money at the speed of light, and I live in Singapore, I'm using Bitcoin. If I live in Paris, I'm using Bitcoin. If I live in Moscow, I'm using Bitcoin. If I live in China, I'm using Bitcoin. So you see, everybody in the world that actually believes in the idea of a digital asset that wants to build this as a treasury reserve asset, they're going to gravitate toward the most powerful network. Why? Because everybody else is gravitating there. Why do people go to New York? Because the smart money is in New York. I could go to New York 20 years ago. I could take 10 meetings. I could raise $1 billion in 2 days. So why would you be so stupid as to go to New York? Well, because that's where the money is. The money is in New York. So I went. And what did I bring with me? I brought my brain power, and I built my business there. And so I then reinforced that network effect. There's about $950 trillion worth of wealth out there, $350 trillion worth of real estate. Half of it is just capital or monetary premium. $300 trillion worth of bonds. Half of it is just a monetary premium. $100 trillion worth of equity. Half of it is a monetary premium. 12 trillion worth of gold. 80% of it is a monetary premium. So as the world gets smarter, people are going to sell those things because they don't make good money. Gold is awful money, right? It's just awful money. If you store your money in gold, you're losing half of your wealth every 35 years. So why would you do that, right? It's not working. In the last 2.5 years, gold is down 5%. Bitcoin is up 150%. The only people that are buying or holding gold are people that aren't paying attention, right? The smart money is clearly running away from it. And in time, people will dump their gold. And when they dump their gold, Bitcoin will jump by a factor of 10.
During the interview, Saylor uses himself as an example. Once a Bitcoin critic, the MicroStrategy executive chairman had once tweeted that the leading crypto asset was going to go the way of online gambling. That was in 2013 when each coin was trading below $100. Years later, when Bitcoin passed the business executive's test and proved to be a worthy investment, each coin was trading for around $10,000. Saylor says he didn't stop to consider those that had invested earlier because he knew there was still so much to be made from buying and holding Bitcoin. Here are more clips from the interview.
The answer to the question of why you should buy a Bitcoin is a Bitcoin represents one block in cyber New York, which has got 21 million blocks for all of eternity. And in the year 2500, people are going to be moving to cyber New York, right? I mean, New York was founded a long time ago, right? The only thing that keeps people from continuing to come into the great city, whether it's the New York or the London or the Paris, is when the economic flows move from the physical domain to the digital domain. As long as you did business in an analog world where you had to like put on a suit and walk into a building and meet with people, then you're going to see London and Paris and Tokyo and Hong Kong be great cities. When the economy moves to the digital realm, and you don't have to put on a suit and walk into a building, and you can have a Zoom meeting of 20 people in 20 places and raise $1 billion in a day, right? Then some of the economic energy drains out of the city networks and it drains into the crypto network. And so buying a Bitcoin, whether it's 1 Bitcoin or 1 million Satoshis or 100,000 Satoshis or 1 Satoshi, is just like buying into New York City 250 years ago. Yeah, sure, you're late. People got there 100 years before you. Okay. Well, in this case, someone got there 14 years before you. I once tweeted, very famously, I said, I think Bitcoin is, going the way of online gambling. And I think Bitcoin is like $100 a coin then. Okay. And I was wrong, but I didn't need it. I was wrong. When I needed Bitcoin was $9,500, $10,000 a coin. And so I bought it at $10,000 instead of $100. People will buy it at 100,000. They will buy it at 1 million. They will probably buy it at 10 million, right? Because, how much does it cost for an apartment in Manhattan? People pay $10 million for 4,000 square feet. $10 million, right? All of Manhattan was purchased for like $29 in beads or something. If you roll the clock back, some nothing. And so you can't really get caught up in what the unit price is. You have to ask the question, what is the dominant network in cyberspace? And Bitcoin is the dominant network. And the reason it's the dominant network is a bunch of things. One, all the smart money arrived there, right? If all the smart people that wanted a decentralized, non-sovereign store of value crypto network, if they all showed up, looked at 10,000 choices and picked this one and put all their money on it, right? That's like all the smart people, they showed up in America and they picked New York. Bitcoin is backed by 400 exahash of digital energy, and 400 exahash of digital energy makes it the most powerful computer network in the world. And so if I'm going to put $1 billion on it, I would want the indestructible, nation-state resistant, fault-tolerant, most powerful computer network in the world. I wouldn't want the second most powerful network. And I wouldn't want a network 100 times less powerful. I want a network where you would need every computer in the world to slow it down 10%, and you would need all the electricity in the world to slow it down 10%. And that's what Bitcoin represents because of the way it's engineered. It represents an indestructible, unstoppable, most powerful computer network. And so anybody is looking to, if you're looking right now, you shouldn't look at it as, well, I wanted to buy something cheap and wait for it to go up 100x, so I better buy something that's a penny stock. It's not a matter of the cost to buy the thing. It's a question of how secure is the network you're buying into.
Over the next years and decades, Saylor expects the economic activities and gains in cities around the world to begin bleeding into cyberspace. Despite being around for only 14 short years, Bitcoin has already established itself as the world's leading digital asset and the epicenter of economic activities in cyberspace. So it is expected that it would get a giant share of all economic activities and investments that bleed into cyberspace. What are your thoughts on Michael Saylor's analogy between Bitcoin and New York City?
If you think about it, Bitcoin serves as two kinds of hedges. One is a hedge against inflation and outright confiscation of wealth. The other is against counterparty risk. And, when the regional banks started going down, this fear sort of, our memories are fresh with 0809, the counterparty risk became real. And so there was this flight into Bitcoin, a completely decentralized, transparent network, which is not subject to counterparty risk.
The first important deadline coming up is August 13th, where the ARC filing, the SEC is either going to delay it, which we think they'll probably delay it. What's your take on how this will play out, given you filed earlier?
I think you're probably right that August 13th will come and go, and I think the SEC, if it's going to approve a Bitcoin ETF, will approve more than one at once. So then, again, because most of these essentially will be the same, and it will come down to marketing, communicating the message. You know, we've been putting out our Bitcoin monthly for the last year. We are now starting a Bitcoin brainstorming session. Our first one we launched last Thursday. So we're trying to get the word out there that our research is deep. And we've been doing it since 2015 when we gained our first exposure to GBTC. We were the first public asset manager to gain exposure to Bitcoin at all in 2015. The two other branches of government, the judicial branch and the legislative branch, are giving the SEC pause because the SEC is losing cases in court having to do with its regulations around crypto. That's the first thing. And there are bills that are making their way through the House and are seeing some bipartisan support. So I do believe that Gary Gensler, I guess last week or 10 days ago, said something like, well, I'm not the only one who makes this decision. There are 5 commissioners. Now, of course, we know they're weighted towards the Democrats, 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans. And so one assumes that the way that Gary votes is the way the SEC will vote. But he seemed to be distancing himself a little bit, and so maybe we can take that as a bit of a clue. What I find so interesting still, and this is why we believe that the SEC will lose the grayscale case, how can you approve a Bitcoin futures ETF and not a Bitcoin ETF? And in fact, if you're really thinking about consumer protection, a futures ETF has swap space. So there's counterparty risk there that you would not have with a Bitcoin ETF, which is backed 1-to-1 with Bitcoin in Coinbase's cold storage. It still confounds me.
Cathie Wood believes the judicial and legislative branches of the United States government are positive influences likely to reduce regulators' all-out war against the cryptocurrency industry. As such, she is certain that SEC will be pressed to approve some of the spot Bitcoin ETF applications and Ether futures ETF applications before it. Since late July, about a half dozen companies have refiled applications for Ether futures ETF after being previously asked to withdraw their applications by the SEC. The applicants include Volatility Shares, Grayscale, Bitwise, ProShares, and VanEck. According to Blockworks, the companies began refiling for a futures ETF for Ether after the SEC indicated its readiness to consider a futures ETF based on the leading altcoin. Some of these companies also reportedly received calls from SEC staff stating the agency was ready to publicly review their applications. Do you think the SEC is ready to approve these applications anytime soon? And how do you think that will impact crypto prices? Let's know what you think in the comments section below while we bring you clips from Wood's interview as she discusses her outlook on Coinbase and Tesla, 2 companies she clearly favors.
We think that it is the most regulatory compliant exchange out there. And we've been very pleased with how its derivatives exchange in Bermuda has ramped in here. It's very early days, but again, clearly a trusted partner. And we are also seeing that there's more turmoil out there, I guess. Hubei, I think that's how you say the name of the exchange, and Tether and Binance. There are rumblings out there that not is all is well, and so Coinbase is going to be the flight to safety exchange, no doubt about it.
And do you think the surveillance agreements with Coinbase are going to be enough to deal with things like price manipulation in this market? I mean, that's been one of the main concerns from the SEC lawyers with whom we've spoken.
Well, what I find so interesting still, and this is why we believe that the SEC will lose the grayscale case, how can you approve a Bitcoin futures ETF and not a Bitcoin ETF? And in fact, if you're really thinking about consumer protection, a futures ETF is swap space. So there's counterparty risk there that you would not have with a Bitcoin ETF, which is backed 1-to-1 with Bitcoin in Coinbase's cold storage. It still confounds me. We loved Zach and love Zach and think he will do very well wherever he goes. I know there are rumors out that there are some CEO positions out there which he might like to take. So we will miss him, but his successor has been with Tesla right underneath him since 2018. So he was put through the fires. Remember, in 2018-19, many analysts were saying that Tesla was going bankrupt. And so he's been there, he's gone through the fire, and, it's a tough job. It's a tough job. So I guess 13 years was a really good run for Zach, and can't say enough good things about him and what he did for Tesla. But I think he trained his successor well.
What are your expectations for their growth from here on out?
Well, as you know, we have a 5-year investment time horizon, and we do think the cycle for autos is going to get tougher in here generally. But we think, just like last year when electric vehicles were up 69% or 65%, something like that, and gas-powered vehicles down 7% globally, we think we're going to continue to see that share shift accelerate because electric vehicle prices are going to follow their costs down in a way that gas-powered cars cannot. So we think that electric vehicles will be less expensive, and they are better cars than gas-powered vehicles. So we think they're going to take tremendous share. And even if the auto market relapses in here, which we think it could, we don't think electric vehicles will relapse. So we think the 1.8 million for this year, which was, Elon said 1.8 to 2 million, they're going to have some shutdowns in the third quarter for maintenance and upgrades, and so he lowered his expectation to the lower end of that range. I think he likes to lower expectations and then beat, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's higher than that.
On the issue of spot Bitcoin ETF applications in 2021, digital currency asset management company Grayscale Investments filed to convert its Grayscale Bitcoin Trust into a Bitcoin spot ETF. The SEC rejected the proposal last June, which resulted in a lawsuit, which many, including Cathie Wood, believe the SEC will lose. In March, during hearings on the case, a panel of judges questioned the SEC on why it denied the application, noting that the Commission's concerns about market manipulation did not stop it from approving Bitcoin futures applications. One of the judges said, "It seems like it's fine for an agency to say, okay, we need some more information, but it seems there's quite a bit of information here on how these markets work together, and the SEC has not offered any explanation that the petitioners here are wrong." According to Sam Seif, the chief executive officer of Purpose Investments, which runs the Purpose Bitcoin ETF, a spot Bitcoin ETF that has been trading in Canada since February 2021, the courts will likely force the SEC to provide some much-needed clarity. Seif said, "I think that there's a really important thing because through the regulatory and legal process, they will be forced to actually give very specific reasons and actually back those reasons. If the Commission cannot provide adequate clarity on what's stopping its approval of the applications, then it would have to approve them."